beside, trusted. Mathieu stepped into the dim light, face half-lit, half-devoured by darkness. "Aldric," he said calmly, almost kindly. "Step away from the blade." Aldric tightened his grip. "No." Mathieu exhaled and smiled. "It seems the sword has already begun speaking to you." He raised a hand, signaling his soldiers to surround the chamber. "Which means you know too much, and you must die here." Aldric slowly lifted the blade. For the first time in centuries, it awakened fully. Silver fire erupted along its length, flooding the chamber with blinding light. The stone floor beneath Aldric cracked in a spiderweb pattern. Mathieu's smile faltered. Aldric's voice echoed with something not entirely human. "I am the last keeper, and you chose the wrong night to betray us." The chamber exploded into chaos, and the 40-day countdown began. Part 2. The Betrayer's Mark. The explosion of light faded, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Aldric stood among swirling dust, the awakened sword humming like a caged storm in his grip. Cracks radiated across the chamber floor, fresh wounds etched into stone older than scripture. Mathieu staggered back, shielding his eyes. His soldiers weren't as fortunate. Some were thrown against the walls, unconscious. Others crawled away in terror, whispering prayers to a god who suddenly felt far too small. But Mathieu didn't run. He lowered his hand slowly, his expression shifting from fury to fascination. "So," he whispered, "it chose you." Aldric raised the blade, its glow pulsing like a living heartbeat. "You murdered our brothers," he said, voice shaking with contained rage. "You defiled sacred vows." Mathieu's lips curled into a strange, sad smile. "It wasn't murder, Aldric. It was mercy." Aldric froze. Mercy. Mathieu stepped forward, revealing a symbol burned into the skin of his wrist, a black spiral intersected by a vertical line. The mark glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with the distant tremor that Aldric realized wasn't the earth, but the sword responding to it. "You know nothing of what sleeps beneath this world," Mathieu continued. "Nothing of the Convergence, nothing of what the church hides from even its own warriors." "And you do," Aldric growled. Mathieu's smile deepened. "Oh, Aldric, I've seen what's coming. I've heard the voice beneath the voice. There is a new order rising, a true order." He nodded toward the sword. "And that thing in your hand, it isn't your salvation. It's your death sentence." The blade vibrated sharply, almost as if warning him. Aldric tightened his grip. "Explain." Before Mathieu could respond, the sword's voice cut through the chamber like cold wind. "Do not listen to him." Aldric flinched. Mathieu's eyes widened. "So it has already begun whispering," Mathieu said softly. "Tell me, Aldric, did it show you the visions? Did it show you what happens when keepers fail?" Aldric said nothing. Mathieu nodded slowly. "That's enough of an answer." He raised his hand, and his remaining soldiers surged forward. Aldric moved before he consciously decided to. The sword guided him. Step, strike, pivot, like a second heartbeat, like instinct sharpened beyond human capability. Steel met steel. Cries echoed through the chamber. Shadows danced like living things. One by one, Mathieu's men fell. Not dead. Aldric wasn't killing them. The sword wouldn't let him. But Mathieu, he was already backing away toward a hidden exit in the stone. Coward. Aldric lunged, but the sword jolted violently in his hand, stopping him mid-stride. Not yet! Aldric gasped. Why? The sword's voice deepened. If he dies now, the timeline fractures. You must let him run. Aldric watched helplessly as Mathieu slipped through the opening and vanished into darkness. The chamber fell still. Silence settled like dust. Aldric closed his eyes, breathing hard. Then tell me, he whispered to the sword. What am I meant to do? The weapon softened its glow. There is no time. You must leave Jerusalem tonight. Where do I go? Stone shifted behind him, revealing a mural he hadn't noticed before. 3 figures, their silhouettes distinct. One holding a book of light. One with hands raised toward the sky. One holding the sword he now carried. The sword spoke. The seer awaits in Venetia. The herald sleeps beneath the stones of Avalon. Aldric's throat tightened. Italy, Britain, 2 opposite directions, and 40 days to reach both. Which one first? Aldric pressed. The sword responded, choose quickly. Mathieu will move faster than you, and he is not working alone. A chill crawled down Aldric's spine. If I fail to unite us before the Convergence, the sword didn't hesitate, then the world will fall into night that no dawn can break. Aldric lifted his hood, steadied his breath, and turned toward the chamber's exit tunnels. The hunt had begun, and somewhere beyond the city walls, the traitor was already preparing the world's end. Part 3. Flight from Jerusalem. Night fell fast over Jerusalem, not gently, not peacefully, but like a curtain pulled down by an unseen hand. Swift, heavy, final. Aldric slipped through the narrow stone passages beneath the temple mount, moving by instinct and by the faint, eerie glow of the awakened sword strapped across his back. The tunnels were older than memory, older than scripture, older than anything humans had the right to walk inside. The air hummed with something ancient, something waking. Each footstep echoed as though the darkness itself were listening. He had 40 days before the Convergence. "40 days before the world crossed a threshold it might not survive. Outside, distant bells rang, the city's evening prayers. But tonight, the sound felt wrong, too slow, too distorted. The sword whispered, "The Convergence distorts time. Jerusalem feels its first tremors." Aldric tightened his cloak. "You said he'd move quickly. Mathieu has already left the city." Aldric froze. "That fast? Which direction?" Silence. The sword hesitated. Aldric felt it. "He is shielded. Someone cloaks him." Aldric's jaw clenched. Another player, another force, someone strong enough to blind an ancient relic. That meant the Order of the Spiral, the cult whose mark Mathieu bore, was far larger and far more prepared than Aldric had hoped. Not a rogue group, not a faction, a shadow army. He climbed a narrow staircase and emerged into the cool night air behind the outer walls of the city. The sky churned with thick, fast-moving clouds, unnatural patterns swirling like a spiral. That same mark. The spiral. Aldric pulled his hood lower and crossed into a quiet district. weaving through alleys lit by lanterns and moonlight. He needed a horse, he needed provisions, he needed to choose his path. Venezia, to find the seer; Avalon, to awaken the herald; Italy or Britain, two opposite ends of the known world. Before he could choose, the sword pulsed sharply against his spine. Stop! Aldric froze. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming from both sides of the alley. He moved a hand toward his blade. The sword whispered, "Not yet." Figures stepped out of the shadows, cloaked, hooded, faces hidden behind metal masks carved with spirals. Order of the Spiral, at least 6 of them. The tallest one pointed a slender staff toward Aldric. The top twisted open like an iron flower. A whisper of wind coiled through the alley, and then suddenly, silence. Total silence. Aldric's ears rang. The world flickered. Like a candle about to die, the sword growled, "A null field." They are severing sound. Move! One of the masked figures lunged. Aldric rolled, grabbing the sword just as the field tightened around him. His hearing blinked in and out, sound cracking like glass. He swung. The sword didn't guide this time. He had to rely on instinct and movement, not the weapon's strange intelligence. Steel clashed. Sparks lit the silent alley. Aldric ducked, blocked, countered, each strike landing with no sound at all. Silent combat. But Aldric was a Templar, trained. Disciplined, deadly. He took down the first cloaked figure, then the second. The third slammed the staff into the ground. A wave of pressure hit Aldric's chest like a fist. He staggered back, dropping to one knee. The iron flower at the staff's tip glowed, then snapped closed. Instantly sound returned, shouts, breathing, steps, wind. The masked warriors fell back, recoiling as if burned. The sword roared to life. "Aldric, now!" He surged forward, blade flashing as he cut through the narrowest gap between the masked figures and burst into the open street. A horn sounded behind him, not a city horn, a spiral horn, a summoning. Aldric didn't look back. He just ran. He sprinted through the marketplace, vaulted over a merchant table, dodged a startled mule, and slipped into the stables near the northern gate. A young stable boy shouted as Aldric yanked the reins off the fastest mare. "I'll return her," Aldric promised. He wouldn't. He knew he wouldn't. He mounted fast and kicked the horse into a full gallop. Hooves thundered, alleyways blurred. Behind him, torches ignited, masks glinted. The spiral gave chase. He tore through the city gates just as they began to close for the night, barely slipping through the narrowing gap. Once outside the walls, the desert wind hit him like a cold wave. The sword vibrated. "Choose now, Keeper, Venezia or Avalon." Aldric stared into the horizon. Italy to the west, Britain far north. One path would lead to truth, the other to death. He exhaled once, then made his choice, and the mare carried him into the darkness beyond Jerusalem. Part 4. The road through ashen night. The desert swallowed Aldric whole. Moonlight moonlight carved long silver lines across the cracked earth as his horse galloped north, toward the route that would eventually lead him across the Mediterranean and into Avalon, the land of the second chosen soul, the Herald, the one who would either amplify the Convergence or silence it forever. Wind tore at Aldric's cloak. Sand stung his eyes, but he didn't slow. Not when he felt the spiral pursuing him. Not when the sword whispered warnings. Not when doubt clawed quietly at the back of his mind. After nearly an hour, he slowed the mare to a careful trot along a narrow ridge overlooking a valley drowned in shadow. The sword hummed. "You chose Avalon." Aldric nodded silently. "It's where the Herald must be, isn't it?" "No." The answer struck him like a blow. Aldric pulled the reins sharply. "Then why send me here? Why push me to choose if..." "Because choice is part of the Keeper's awakening." The sword's voice softened, if such a thing were possible for ancient steel. "This is not prophecy. This is alignment." Aldric breathed hard through his nose, grounding himself. So, the Herald could be anywhere. Perhaps, perhaps not. He resisted the urge to throw the sword into the sand. How am I supposed to find two people in the entire world in 40 days? A long pause. Then, because they are already walking toward you. Aldric turned his head sharply. Meaning what? Meaning fate has been moving pieces long before you awakened. He grit his teeth, but before he could respond, the mare froze beneath him. Her ears twitched. She snorted nervously. Aldric felt it then too. The air shifted. The sky above the ridge pulsed faintly, just once, like a heartbeat. Aldric pulled the sword free. Its surface reflected the night sky, yet distorted, showing a different pattern of stars entirely. A memory of an older world. The sword vibrated sharply. Incoming. Aldric tightened his grip. Spiral? Worse. The ground trembled, not a quake, not a stampede, something descending. Wind whipped violently in a perfect circle, scattering dust and grit. The mare reared. Aldric jumped off and pushed her away. "Go, go!" She fled into the darkness. Aldric turned to face the swirling vortex forming before him. At first, it was only sound, low, resonant, like chanted words spoken underwater. Then came the shape. A tall figure wrapped in robes blacker than the night around them, face hidden behind a mask formed of two halves, one silver, one bone, a symbol burned on their chest, the spiral, but fractured, split by a vertical line, not the order of the spiral, a splinter order, a heretical division. Aldric stepped back, raising the blade. The figure spoke, its voice layered, impossibly old. Aldric of the broken line, last keeper of the old blood, your awakening disrupts the convergence. The sword hissed, "Do not trust them." Aldric kept his stance ready. "Who are you?" The figure lifted its mask just enough for Aldric to see their eyes. Human, but burning with a faint blue glow, familiar, unsettling. "We are the Devisum, those who broke away when the spiral lost its purpose." Aldric tightened his grip. "What do you want from me?" The Devisum priest extended a skeletal hand. "To warn you." A gust of wind swept across the ridge, carrying grains of sand that shone faintly like ember dust. Mathieu was not your first enemy, and he will not be your last. Aldric stepped closer. You know where he's going. The masked figure inclined its head. We know far more than that. Silence hung heavy between them. Then the priest spoke slowly, every syllable dripping with weight. The herald you seek has already crossed the sea. Aldric's chest tightened. He whispered, toward Avalon. The Divison priest nodded once. But he is not alone. Aldric's pulse quickened. Who is with him? The wind died. The night stilled. The priest leaned close, voice descending into an urgent whisper. An ancient presence moves beside him, one your order once worshipped and then feared. Aldric swallowed hard. And who leads the spiral now? Who orchestrates this? For the first time, the Divison priest hesitated. Their voice trembled. They call him the architect. Aldric frowned. I've never heard. You wouldn't. The priest stepped back, mask lowering again. He was erased from your history. Lightning cracked far in the distance, blue, unnatural, splitting the clouds. The priest turned toward it. I have risked much by coming here, Aldric, but the convergence accelerates. Everything bends toward a single point. Every choice matters. Then tell me what I must do. The priest's final words were almost mournful. Find the herald, find the seer, and when the architect reveals himself, do not hesitate. The wind rose suddenly, violently. Sand spiraled upward, engulfing the priest. Within seconds, the figure dissolved into the storm, vanishing as though they had never existed. Aldric was left alone on the ridge, the desert silent, the sky trembling, the sword warm against his hand. He exhaled, slow and steady, then whispered, Avalon, I'm coming. And he began the long road north. Part 5. The Crossing of Shadows. Aldric traveled north for 6 days. 6 days of desert winds, narrow mountain passes, sleeping under fractured skies that flickered with unnatural storms. 6 days with no company except the sword's occasional whisper and the uncomfortable truth that something was following him. Not spiral soldiers, not Divison priests. Something older, something he had no name for. Every night he felt it watching from beyond the firelight, close enough to sense, too distant to face. But on the 7th day, the land changed. The dry sands gave way to olive trees, stone villages, and the salted air of the Mediterranean coast. He reached the port of Tyre just before dusk. The town was restless. Fishermen argued in hushed tones. Merchants closed their stalls earlier than usual. Travelers hurried toward inns with anxious eyes. Aldric guided his horse through the busy street, but he felt it, eyes on him, whispers following him like thin threads. The spiral is here. He dismounted and entered a dim tavern near the docks. The smell of roasted lamb and sea brine hung thick in the air. Sailors murmured at wooden tables. A lonely lute played in the corner. Aldric approached the innkeeper, a stout woman with sharp eyes. A ship, he said quietly. I need passage north, fast. She studied him for 3 long seconds. Corsica? Sicily? Venezia? He hesitated. Avalon was far beyond any direct route. He needed the chain of islands first. Venezia? The innkeeper lowered her voice. Strange days for sea travel, Knight. Waters are wrong. Aldric leaned closer. How so? Storms where there shouldn't be. Lights in the deep. Voices carried by the tide. She shivered. And last night, one ship disappeared. No survivors. Aldric's jaw tightened. The Convergence was growing. He slid a few silver coins across the table. I don't have a choice. She pocketed them quickly and nodded toward the back door. Then speak to the captain of the North Star. He leaves at dawn, if the sea allows it. Aldric thanked her and turned, but the sword vibrated sharply against his spine. Do not turn around. His blood chilled. Why? The spiral is here. 2 of them. They wait for you to move. Aldric kept walking, forcing his breath slow and steady, and slipped out the back door into a narrow alley. Outside, the night air was colder than it should have been. He could hear footsteps behind him, soft, disciplined, synchronized. He moved into the shadows, hand resting near the sword's hilt. Are they following? He murmured. Yes. He turned into a deserted street leading toward the docks, and the sword whispered, 3 more ahead. A trap. Aldric exhaled once. Then let's not play their game. He sprinted forward. The shadows erupted. Figures dropped from rooftops, stepping out of alleys. Masks gleaming under the moon. The spiral. 7 total. Aldric didn't draw the sword. Yet. He moved fast, weaving between crates, sliding under a fisherman's wagon, using the narrow street to limit how many could attack at once. A dagger whistled past his ear. Another masked figure jumped directly in front of him, but Aldric's momentum was unstoppable. He slammed into the attacker with his shoulder, knocking them against a wall. He dashed toward the pier. Wood creaked beneath his boots. Lanterns swayed in the rising wind. Waves crashed violently, far too violently for a calm night. The spiral shadows closed in. The sword growled, "Aldric, draw me!" He hesitated. Using the sword always unleashed something. A spark he didn't fully understand, a reaction from the world around him, but he had no choice. Aldric pulled the blade free. Light flashed. But not white, not silver. Tonight the sword glowed faintly blue, the same color as the Divisim priest's eyes. The spiral soldiers recoiled, murmuring in shock behind their masks. Aldric swung once. A crescent arc of blue fire sliced the air, cracking wooden planks and sending 2 attackers flying into the sea. The others lunged. Steel clashed. Sparks lit the dock. Aldric moved like he was guided, every step precise, every strike intentional. He wasn't fighting alone. The sword was fighting with him. One masked soldier tried to pin his arm. Aldric spun, kicked the attacker's knee, and struck with the pommel of the blade. Another soldier charged with a short spear. Aldric ducked, swept their legs, and sent them crashing into a pile of fishing nets. Only one remained. He wore a mask of darker metal, carved with deeper spirals. A leader. He pointed his staff at Aldric. A whispering sound erupted, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. Aldric's head pounded. He dropped to one knee. The staff glowed violently, but then the blue light from Aldric's sword flared, brighter, sharper. The spiral leader stepped back in shock. "Impossible," he muttered. "That blade should not—" Aldric surged forward. One strike, clean, decisive. The staff shattered. The mask cracked. The leader collapsed onto the wooden boards. Aldric breathed heavily, chest heaving. The sword dimmed back to silver. "They will not stop," it whispered. "Not until you reach Avalon." Aldric looked toward the harbor. A single ship waited in the dark, the North Star. Its captain stood on deck staring at Aldric with wide eyes, not with fear, but with recognition. He raised a hand. "Templar," he called. "If you want passage, we leave now." Aldric tightened his grip on the sword. The convergence was accelerating. The world was shifting. Avalon awaited. "Let's go," Aldric said, and he boarded the ship that would change everything. Part 6. The Sea That Remembers. The North Star pushed away from the docks under a moon veiled in thin silver clouds. Waves slapped against the hull in a sluggish rhythm, too slow, too deep, as if the ocean were thinking. Aldric stood near the bow, cloak fluttering in the wind. He watched the shoreline shrink into darkness, watched the lanterns of Tyre fade one by one, until only the Black Sea remained. Behind him, the captain approached. A tall man with braided grey hair and a scar that crossed his left cheek, eyes steady, a presence that did not flinch easily. "I am Captain Leorayan," he said, voice calm but marked with something Aldric rarely heard in hardened sailors: caution. Aldric nodded. "Thank you for leaving early." "I didn't do it for you." Leorayan leaned on the railing, scanning the horizon. "The winds are wrong. The currents pull north when they should pull west, and the nights—" He paused. Aldric turned. "What about the nights? They're aware." Aldric felt the sword vibrate softly at his hip. "Has something been following us?" he asked. Leorayan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Aldric the way a man examines a puzzle before touching it. "You carry something old," he said, "something that changes the air itself." Aldric stiffened. "Are you spiral?" Leorayan snorted. "No, but I've seen them. 3 weeks ago they approached my ship, asked about a knight with silver eyes. Aldric's breath caught. Silver eyes, the divison priest, the unnatural storms, the convergence. He swallowed. "And?" "I said I hadn't seen you," Leoran replied. "But the truth is, I've dreamt of you." Aldric turned fully. "What kind of dreams?" Leoran's voice lowered. "A sword waking under the sea, a knight running from shadows that wear faces, a tower with no doors, and a spiral turning above the world." Aldric exchanged a glance with the sword, though he didn't need words to feel its tension. "He is seer-touched," the sword whispered in Aldric's mind. Not the seer, but touched by the same thread of prophecy. Aldric spoke softly. "Captain, if you have dreamed these things, then fate has already tied you to this." Leorayan let out a slow breath. "That's what I feared." Waves broke harder against the hull. Aldric looked over the railing and froze. The water was glowing faintly. Not with moonlight, not with reflection, but from within. a soft, luminescent blue, the same blue that had flared from the sword when the spiral attacked him. Aldric stepped back. "Captain, is this normal?" Leorain shook his head. "No, it's the third night the sea has done this." The sword vibrated again. "Something stirs beneath us." Aldric leaned forward. "Something alive?" Alive and remembering. A shiver crawled up Aldric's neck. Before he could answer, the sea rose in a sudden swell, slamming the ship sideways. The crew shouted, ropes strained, wood groaned, barrels rolled across the deck. Aldric grabbed the railing. "What is this?" he shouted. Leorain stared into the glowing water, eyes widening. "Look!" Shapes moved beneath the surface, not fish, not whales. They were too large, too synchronized. Massive silhouettes, gliding like ancient guardians. Aldric felt their presence inside his bones, as if they moved through water and memory alike. "What are they?" Aldric whispered. The sword answered, "Remnants." Aldric's breath hitched. Remnants of what? Of the first world. Before Aldric could respond, one of the colossal shapes rose closer to the surface. The glow intensified, and a massive eye opened beneath the waves, circular, pallid silver, ancient. It stared directly at Aldric. He lost his breath. Leorain backed away in terror. "Saints preserve us." The sword pulsed with heat against Aldric's hand. "It recognizes you," it whispered. The creature, whatever it was, began circling the ship slowly, almost reverently. Aldric could barely speak. "Why? What does it want?" "It remembers the first keepers." The words hit him like stone. Aldric gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. The creature completed its circle, then dipped below the surface. The glow faded. The sea grew calm. The crew stood breathless, trembling. Leorain approached Aldric again, voice hoarse. "What kind of path have you brought my ship into?" Aldric closed his eyes. "I'm not leading the path," he whispered. "I'm following it." The captain hesitated, then nodded grimly. "Well, come dawn, we'll reach Crete, then Venetia, then Avalon." He paused. "But if the sea keeps waking like this, you may have far less than 40 days. Aldric stared into the black water. He knew the truth. He wouldn't have 40 days, not 30, not 20. The world was accelerating. He felt it in the sea, in the blade, in his bloodline. Everything was converging faster, too fast. "Avalon," he murmured, "please hold." And the North Star sailed through a sea that should not glow, beneath a sky that pulsed like a turning omen, toward a destiny older than kingdoms. The moon had already climbed high above the desert ruins when Aldric forced himself to stop walking. His breath was shallow, his pulse uneven, and the sword at his back hummed with a soft vibration, the kind that meant something was watching. He stood at the edge of an ancient well, its stones eroded by centuries of wind. The air around it felt different, thicker, as if the world itself held its breath. Aldric placed his palm on the stone rim. Instantly, the sword spoke inside his mind. "This is where he died." Aldric froze. "Who?" "The one who carried me before you, the one who failed." The desert wind fell silent. Aldric's chest tightened as a memory surfaced, not his own, A short, violent flash, blood dripping into the well, a man kneeling, hands reaching for the sky, a shadow swallowing him whole. Aldric stumbled backward, gripping the hilt. What was his mission? He whispered. For the first time, the sword hesitated. The same as yours. Aldric's stomach twisted. He stared into the well's darkness. Something at the bottom glowed faintly, a soft, pulsing blue like a heartbeat. He knew the relic was calling. He tied a rope to a broken column, looped it around himself, and descended. The deeper he went, the colder the air became, unnaturally cold, as if he were sinking into a world forgotten by time. Halfway down, he saw symbols carved into the walls, Templar sigils, but altered, curved into spirals that didn't belong to any known order, and beneath them, a warning in Old French. The second will be found where light refuses to die. A clue. For one of the two he must find. Aldric swallowed. He descended further. At the bottom, he stood ankle-deep in water. The glow intensified, reflecting on the surface like liquid moonlight. And there, embedded in the stone floor, rested a circular plate of crystal. When Aldric touched it, the world shattered into light. A map unfolded in his mind, not made of roads or borders, but of voices, threads of fate intersecting through centuries. At the center of it, the sword's presence expanded, whispering 3 paths, 3 bearers, 3 choices, 1 end. The map showed a monastery buried in constant twilight, a woman standing before a burning library, a storm forming over a city that should not exist yet. Aldric gasped, clutching his head. The vision stopped. In the silence that followed, he heard a single sound, a breath, but it wasn't his. He turned. Something moved at the edge of the well's shadows. Slow footsteps, wet stone cracking softly. A figure rising from the darkness. At first, Aldric thought it was a man, but the posture, the limping, unnatural twist of the limbs said otherwise. The creature stepped into the faint light of the crystal. Its jaw hung open as if dislocated. Its eyes were black, reflective. The eyes of something that remembered being human, but no longer was. Aldric's pulse hammered. "What are you?" he whispered. The creature's mouth moved, and in a voice that sounded like water drowning itself, it said, "I was the one who failed." Aldric staggered back. The sword burned in his hand, hot, urgent. The creature took another step. Its ribs expanded unnaturally, bones stretching, cracking, reforming. The transformation wasn't violent, it was slow, painful, as if whatever cursed essence inhabited the body was forcing itself to remain alive. Aldric raised the sword. Its voice was calm. "You cannot save him, but you can free him." The creature lunged. Aldric swung. Light erupted, blinding, pure. And when it faded, the creature was kneeling, fading into mist. With the last shreds of its human voice, it whispered, "Find the girl, before they do." Then it vanished. Aldric's breath shook. He retrieved the glowing crystal, now pulsing with the same blue heartbeat he had seen earlier. The map whispered again. A location, a direction, and a name. a name he had not heard in years. Ilara, the second chosen one, a woman he once loved and lost. Aldric tightened his grip. 40 days. And now he was already behind. He climbed the rope and emerged from the well under a sky filled with falling stars. The convergence had already begun. Part 7. The Woman of the Burning Library. Aldric rode until the desert was far behind him, and the world shifted once more, from pale sands to the scent of pine forests and cold mountain air. The sword remained silent for hours, almost contemplative, as if the map and the creature from the well had stirred something ancient within it. By sunset, Aldric reached the edge of Valon, a forgotten town carved into the cliffs. Once a center of knowledge, now half buried in snow and almost entirely abandoned. Only one place still breathed, the Grand Scriptorium. Its tall windows flickered with orange light, not warm but chaotic. Flames. Aldric's heart tightened. The vision from the crystal flashed in his mind. A woman standing before a burning library. Ilara, the second chosen. He dismounted, sword humming, and sprinted across the courtyard. The moment he pushed open the massive wooden doors, a wave of heat rolled over him, thick, suffocating, like inhaling the breath of a dying world. Shelves collapsed around him. Ancient manuscripts disintegrated into sparks. Ash swirled through the air like dark snow. Aldric covered his mouth and pressed forward. "Ilara!" he shouted. His voice vanished inside the roaring blaze. Then, through the smoke, he saw her. Standing at the center of the inferno, as if untouched by it, hair whipping in the rising heat, eyes reflecting fire and resolve. Ilara, a woman forged by storms, sharp, fearless, her presence always a mix of danger and grace. She turned slowly, recognizing him. Those eyes, they held memories Aldric had tried to bury. "Still running into fires, I see," she said, her voice steady despite the flames. Aldric took a step toward her. "Ilara, we don't have time for this." "The convergence, I know," she interrupted, and when she lifted her hand, Aldric finally saw it. A relic. A shard of smoky crystal, pulsing with the same blue heartbeat as the map in the well. "Ilara, how did you—" "The library was built around it," she said, "and someone tried to steal it." Aldric's chest tightened. "Who?" She looked past him, expression darkening. "Not who," she whispered. "What?" The floorboards behind Aldric erupted. A massive, spiraling shape burst through red embers. A creature of smoke and bone, its limbs twisting like burned branches, its eyes two smoldering pits of ember. It let out a sound that felt like a scream and a whisper at the same time. Aldric raised the sword. Ilara unsheathed a twin-bladed dagger, Templar make but altered, improvised, deadly. "Did you bring that thing here?" Aldric demanded. Ilara smirked despite the danger. "Did you?" The creature lunged. Aldric blocked with the sword. Ilara slid beneath it, cutting its tendons. The monster shrieked, the sound cracking the stained glass windows above. It reformed instantly. Aldric's blood ran cold. "Ilara," he breathed. It's tied to the relic. She nodded, backing toward a column. That's why we can't kill it here. The sword vibrated violently, voice flooding Aldric's mind. Take her hand, now. He grabbed Ilara's wrist. At the exact moment the creature lunged again, the relic in her hand flared. A blinding burst of blue light sweeping through flame and smoke. The world stretched, warped, snapped, and suddenly the fire was gone. Aldric blinked. He and Ilara now stood in the courtyard outside, snow falling softly around them. No fire, no smoke, only silence. Ilara exhaled, shivering in the cold. You still let that sword boss you around, I see. Aldric ignored the jab and looked at her, really looked at her. Ilara, you were chosen. Her eyes flickered. Fear, recognition, acceptance. A storm of emotion she hid well, but never completely. Yes, she murmured. And if the map is right, there's a third. Aldric nodded. The final keeper. Ilara stepped closer, her breath visible in the cold air. And do you know who it is? Aldric hesitated. He didn't want to say the name. He wasn't ready to. The sword whispered anyway, betraying him with a calm inevitability. Your brother. Ilara's eyes widened. Aldric closed his. A tremor of pain rippled through him because his brother was supposed to be dead. Part 8. The third name that should have been dead. Snow drifted around them in slow, spiraling flakes, as if the world itself hesitated to move after the sword's revelation. Aldric's breath misted in the cold air, heavy, uneven, carrying a tremor he had not felt in years. Ilara watched him carefully. Aldric. Her voice softened, cutting through the silence like a blade wrapped in silk. You told me he died in the siege of Acre. Aldric swallowed hard. I didn't tell you everything. The sword pulsed faintly, as if urging him, no more running, not from this. He stepped back from Ilara, eyes fixed on the falling snow. My brother, Kylum, he didn't die in the siege. He paused. He vanished. Ilara's brows lowered. Vanished? How? Aldric shook his head slowly. One moment he was beside me, fighting, bleeding, laughing, and the next, a blinding flash. A light that tore through the battlefield like a sword made of the sun. He clenched his fist. When the light faded, there was nothing left of him, not a body, not a trace. The ground wasn't even scorched, just empty. Ilara exhaled sharply. That matches the signature of an activation. Aldric turned to her. The relics? She nodded. The ancient ones, the ones we weren't meant to touch. The sword vibrated violently in Aldric's hand, and its voice spilled through their minds. Two echoes, one sound. Kylum was taken, not destroyed. Taken by a force older than your order and bound to the Convergence. Ilara stepped closer, fear flickering through her resolve. So he's alive? Aldric didn't answer immediately. When he finally looked at her, his eyes held a storm. If he is, he's not the same. Ilara didn't ask for details. She knew Aldric too well, and the pain in his voice said enough. Instead, she held out the crystal shard she'd recovered. Then we find him, before they do. A thunderous crack echoed through the mountains. Not thunder, not wind, a tremor. The ground shook beneath their feet as a deep hum, low, resonant, not of nature, rolled across the valley. Aldric and Ilara turned toward the source. Far in the distance, a mountain peak split open, releasing a column of blinding blue light that pierced the clouds like a pillar to the heavens. Ilara's eyes widened. "That's the second beacon." Aldric tightened his grip on the sword. "How many awakenings until the convergence begins?" Ilara inhaled slowly. "3. Aldric stared at the distant beam, a chilling, eerie glow slicing the sky. "And how many have awakened so far?" Ilara lifted her eyes to his. 1. A moment of stillness. Then Aldric spoke, voice low and edged with dread. "Then that beam, that has to be..." Ilara nodded. "The second relic holder, the third chosen." Aldric's heart pounded. "Calum!" For a heartbeat, the world felt suspended, like the snowflakes had stopped mid-air, like breath itself paused. Then the sword's voice whispered through the wind. "But he is not coming to be found. He is coming to finish the circle." Aldric's pulse froze. "What does that mean?" The sword did not answer. Instead, the beam of light pulsed once, twice, and a wave of energy blasted across the valley, knocking Aldric and Ilara to their knees. The snow around them evaporated. The air turned electric. The sky darkened. Ilara shielded her eyes. "Aldric, something stepping out of the beam!" Through the swirling light, a silhouette appeared, tall, hooded, striding forward with slow, deliberate steps. Aldric's breath caught. No, it couldn't be. The figure reached the edge of the beam, stopped, lifted its head, eyes opened, glowing with the same ancient blue as the relics. Eyes Aldric knew, eyes he had once laughed with, fought beside, bled for. Calum, alive, changed, and staring directly at Aldric. "Aldric," Ilara whispered. What is he now?" The sword's voice answered coldly, like winter speaking. "He is the one chosen to oppose you." Part 9. Brothers divided by light. The wind howled across the plateau, whipping the last shreds of snow into spirals as Aldric rose slowly to his feet. The hooded figure stepped fully out of the beam. Calum, alive, transformed, radiating an ancient power that did not belong to flesh or bone. His cloak was torn, edges scorched by energies that hummed faintly, as if reality itself struggled to touch him. Aldric tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Calum tilted his head, studying him with an unsettling calm, not like a brother reunited, but like a judge evaluating a stranger. "Aldric," he said at last. His voice carried two notes, his own and a deeper, older resonance beneath it. "You should not have come." Ilara stiffened beside Aldric. "That's not your brother speaking," she whispered. Calum's gaze snapped to her, cold, lethal. "Ilara of the Silent Veil," he said, as if reading her name from her bones. "You carry the second shard." "Hand it over." Aldric stepped in front of her. "No!" Calum blinked slowly, a gesture that once had been human, now hollow, eerie. "So you still protect the wrong people?" His glowing eyes narrowed. "Just as you did on the final day at Acre." Aldric's chest tightened. "What happened to you?" Calum lifted his hand. Energy crackled around it, blue, ancient, impossible. "The truth," he said. "The truth you were never meant to survive." Aldric drew a shaky breath. "Calum, brother, what took you?" Calum's lips curled, not into a smile, but into something colder. "Not what," he said. "Who?" Before Aldric could respond, the sword in his grip vibrated violently. A warning, a scream felt through bone and soul. "Step back, Aldric. He's bound to the Null Star," Ilara gasped. "That's impossible. The Null Star is a myth." A blast of blue force erupted from Calum, splintering the ice beneath their feet and cutting her words short. Aldric shielded her again, taking the brunt of the shockwave. Calum lowered his hand. The myths were created for those too fragile to face the truth. Aldric steadied himself, jaw clenched. "You vanished, Calum, and instead of fighting your way back, you let something take you." Calum's expression didn't change. "Not take," he said. "Choose." The sword screamed in Aldric's mind. He is the opposition, the counterweight, the anti-keeper. Ilara staggered backward. "No!" "If the Null Star has him, he's..." Calum spoke over her. "I am the harbinger of convergence. The cycle demands 3, and only 1 may survive." Aldric felt the blood drain from his face. "This is madness." "Madness?" Calum stepped closer, each footfall sending a tremor through the snow. "What you carry in your hand is madness. A blade forged not to save the world, but to reset it." Aldric's pulse thundered. "What do you want from us?" Calum pointed toward the far horizon, where storm clouds twisted like a spiral maw. "You have 40 days to reach the 3rd relic, 40 days to complete the prophecy, 40 days before the cycle ends." Ilara gripped Aldric's arm. "What happens in 40 days? Calum's eyes glowed brighter, so bright Aldric had to turn away. "The Convergence." Aldric steadied himself. And then, Calum's voice dropped to a whisper that carried through the dead air like a funeral bell. "Everything burns." A chilling silence spread across the plateau. Then Calum spoke one last time, soft, almost mournful. "Brother, don't follow me." The beam of light surged, pulling Calum backward like a tide of pure energy. His form dissolved into the glow. First the cloak, then the edges of his face, then his eyes. The light snapped shut. The mountain went dark. Aldric stood frozen, the echo of Calum's voice ringing inside him like a wound that would never close. Ilara touched his hand. "Aldric, we must move. Now." But Aldric didn't respond. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. Because the sword, still trembling in his hand, whispered something new, something worse. He knows where the 3rd relic lies, and he will reach it first. Part 10. The map written in blood and stars. The wind died. The mountain stilled. Even the falling snow seemed suspended, as if the world itself hesitated after Calum vanished into the dying beam of light. Aldric finally drew a breath, slow, unsteady, weighted with something deeper than grief. Ilara stepped toward him carefully, as though he were a wounded beast that might break at a single touch. "Aldric," she whispered, "we cannot stay here." His eyes remained fixed on the empty sky where Calum had disappeared. "He's alive," Aldric said softly, "but he's not my brother." Ilara swallowed. "I know." "No," Aldric said, finally turning to her. "You don't." The sword pulsed, as if sensing the storm rising inside him. "Calum wasn't chosen because he was taken." Aldric's voice darkened. "He was taken because he was chosen." Ilara's expression tightened. "We will find him," she said firmly, "and we will break whatever holds him." The sword hissed in their minds, urgent, insistent. "The Harbinger cannot be broken. He exists to oppose you." "And he will destroy all who stand between you and the Convergence." Aldric closed his eyes. "There has to be a way." "There always is." He remembered Calum saying that once, laughing through a split lip as they fought back to back. Always. The memory cut deep. Ilara reached into her cloak and pulled out the crystal shard again. The second relic. It flickered with a faint glow, brighter now, as if awakening in response to Calum's presence. Ilara held it up between them. "This is our advantage," she said softly. "He has knowledge, but we have the map." Aldric's brow furrowed. "What map?" She turned the shard slowly. As the moonlight touched it, shapes began to swirl inside, not reflections but patterns, symbols, coordinates. Aldric's breath caught. "That's a star map," Ilara finished, "written long before our world. It shows the alignment needed for the Convergence, and more importantly, the path to the third relic." Aldric reached for the shard, but Ilara pulled back. "No, you hold the sword, I hold the shard. We carry the burdens separately. That's how we survive." For a moment, Aldric almost smiled. Almost. The sword thrummed again. "The third relic is waking, and the Harbinger moves toward it now." Aldric looked out over the cold, endless expanse below. "Where?" he asked. Ilara inhaled sharply and turned the shard once more. The patterns inside aligned, circles, lines, celestial arcs, and finally settled into a shape unmistakable. A mountain, but not just any mountain. A name whispered through her lips: the spine of Galadriel, the old pilgrimage range. Aldric froze. "That's impossible. The range is sealed by the Order. No one enters without—" Ilara cut him off. "Aldric, the Order didn't seal it. The Order was created to keep people away from it." The wind suddenly picked up. A single violent gust that slammed into them, carrying the echo of thunder from far beyond the horizon. Aldric steadied himself. "So that's where the relic sleeps." Ilara nodded. "And where Calum is heading." He tightened his grip on the sword. "Then we move, now." Ilara tucked the shard close to her chest and nodded once, sharp, determined. Together, they descended into the valley, footsteps crunching softly in the snow. The sky above them churned, dark clouds spiraling like a great unseen eye. As they walked, Aldric whispered, "Ilara, if Calum reaches the relic first..." She didn't let him finish. "Then we stop him." Aldric hesitated. "And if I can't?" Ilara looked at him, eyes steady, voice quiet but unflinching. "Then I will." The sword hummed with approval, but also with an uneasy fear. Because somewhere in the distance, so faint even the wind barely carried it, a second voice whispered, 40 days remain, and one must fall. Part 11, The Valley of Echoes and the Shadow of the Third. Night fell quickly as Aldric and Ilara descended from the plateau, the darkness settling around them like a vast living shroud. The moon rose pale and thin behind veils of clouds, casting a cold blue glow across the valley below. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with a low vibration that seemed to hum beneath the snow. Ilara slowed. You feel it too, she whispered. Aldric nodded. Yes. The valley is awake. The sword in his hand pulsed once, a steady beat like a heartbeat answering another buried deep beneath the earth. This place remembers, the sword whispered. Tread carefully. They stepped into the Valley of Echoes. At once the wind carried faint sounds, not quite voices, not quite memories, but something between the two. Aldrich strained to listen. Whispers drifted through the darkness. "40 days. Chosen. Bloodline. The harbinger walks." Ilara's breath hitched. "These are not illusions," she murmured. "This valley repeats what has been spoken here before. It stores everything." Aldrich scanned the cliffs rising on either side, tall, jagged, etched with symbols that glowed faintly beneath the moonlight. Templar marks, keeper marks, and older ones, far older. He touched one of the carved spirals. A shock raced through his hand, a sudden wave of images bursting into his mind. Ancient robed figures walking this very valley, a temple burning in the distance, a sword raised against the sky, 3 silhouettes standing at the center of a swirling storm. Aldrich stumbled back. Ilara caught his arm. A vision. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Yes, and something else. He glanced down at the sword. Its blade flickered like a dying star. There was a third figure, Aldric said slowly. Not Calum. Not me. Ilara froze. The third? The third keeper, the sword whispered darkly. Hidden, unclaimed, and closer than you think. Aldric and Ilara exchanged a tense glance. Do you know who it is? Ilara asked quietly. The sword vibrated, a soft but unsettling sound. No, but you will know them by the mark of the spiral star. And when the 3 stand together, the blade went cold in Aldric's grip. The world will choose its outcome. Before Aldric could respond, a deep tremor rolled beneath their feet, not like an earthquake, but like something moving far beneath the ground. The valley quieted. Every whisper vanished. Ilara's hand went to her dagger. What was that? Aldric lifted the sword, its faint light illuminating the swirling frost around them. The tremor came again, stronger, closer, and then a voice echoed across the valley, soft but impossible to locate. Aldric! Ilara stiffened. That is not Calum. Aldric slowly turned, searching the cliffs. A shadow detached itself from the darkness above, a figure descending the rocky wall with unnatural quiet. A silhouette cloaked in dark grey, moving with the poise of someone trained in silence and death. They landed in the snow without a sound. Aldric stepped forward. Show yourself. The hooded figure lifted their head. 2 eyes glowed faintly. Not like Calum's corrupted light, but something softer, older, like embers hidden under ash. The figure spoke. Aldric of the Templar Order, I have walked far to find you. Ilara's grip tightened on her dagger. And why should we trust you? The figure slowly removed their hood. A woman, scarred, weathered by long journeys, but her presence radiated something undeniable, a quiet, ancient authority. She extended her hand, palm upward. On her wrist, glowing faintly beneath the skin, was a symbol neither Aldric nor Ilara could mistake. The spiral star. Aldric felt his heart jolt. Ilara, he whispered. She's the third. The mysterious woman bowed her head slightly. My name, she said softly, is Seraphine, and I carry the final piece of the truth. The valley wind swept through the three figures, wrapping, circling, as if acknowledging the gathering of something inevitable. Seraphine's gaze rose to Aldric. The convergence has already begun, and Calum is not your only enemy. Aldric's breath caught. What do you mean? Seraphine stepped forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. There is another force at play, older than the Keepers, older than the Null Star, older than the blade you carry. The tremor returned, this time splitting the ice at their feet. Seraphine looked down at the fissure with grim acceptance. It wakes, Ilara whispered, pale. What wakes? Seraphine slowly raised her eyes, filled with a sorrow that felt as ancient as the valley, the one that ended the First World. Part 12. The Convergence and the Last Choice. The sky above Jerusalem had changed, not just darkened, but tightened, as if the heavens themselves were being drawn inward, pulled toward a single point somewhere above the Mount of Olives. Aldric felt it before he saw it, a low vibration, a resonance echoing inside his bones, inside the sword, inside the world. The convergence had begun. He had minutes, maybe less. And beside him stood the two he had spent 40 days seeking. Ravenna, the seer touched by forbidden sight, and Cassian, the scholar warrior whose bloodline carried the last key. The three of them stared at the sky. A spiral of light was forming. Beautiful, terrible, and impossibly vast. Ravenna whispered, voice trembling, "It's waking. The presence. The one that spoke to you in the chamber." Aldric tightened his grip on the living blade. The sword answered with a pulse, not warm, not cold, but ancient, judging him. Cassian stepped forward, clutching the scrolls he had spent his life studying. Aldric, once that spiral completes its arc, the rift opens. Whatever comes through won't be stoppable. The wind roared, thunder cracked without lightning, the ground trembled. Aldric stared at the forming rift, remembering the words whispered to him in the chamber. "Three shall stand before the gate of dawn, one shall choose." One shall live, one shall fall. He didn't know which he would be. The betrayal revealed a figure approached from behind, hooded, armored, deliberate. Aldric's heart sank. He recognized the step. Grand Master Theron, the man who was supposed to be dead, the man Aldric had trusted above all others. Ravenna gasped. Cassian stepped back. Theron lowered his hood. His eyes glowed faintly, as if lit from within by the same unnatural light twisting in the sky. "You were always too loyal, Aldric," he said softly, too blind to see what the Order was truly guarding. Aldric raised his sword. You've merged with it. The presence. Theron smiled. Merged? No, I've obeyed it. And now it will reshape this world, free from the chains of mortal choice. The spiral widened. The convergence accelerated. Theron extended a hand toward Ravenna. The seer belongs to the gate. Her blood is the final seal. Aldric stepped between them instantly. You will not touch her. Theron's smile faded. The ground split beneath his feet, not from him, but from the rift itself. Time was collapsing. The final battle. Theron moved first, faster than any human, stronger than any knight, empowered by the thing beyond the veil. Aldric barely raised the blade before Theron was upon him. Steel meeting living steel, sparks tearing through the darkening air. Cassian shouted something, a warning, but it was drowned by the roar of the Convergence. Ravenna reached toward Aldric, shouting, "The sword! Let it guide you!" And then he felt it. The blade moved with him, through him, carrying him not as a weapon, but as an extension of something sacred and ancient. Their clash shook the hilltop. Theron nearly overpowered him, until Aldric remembered the chamber's final whisper. Your choice defines the gate, not your strength. Aldric stepped back, lowering his weapon. Theron lunged, and the sword itself reacted. A white shockwave burst outward. Theron fell to his knees, screaming as the presence's light flickered inside him, unstable, uncontrolled. Ravenna gasped. Cassian stared in awe. Aldric knew. This wasn't victory. This was the moment of choice. The last choice. The spiral reached its center. A tear split open in the sky, a luminous wound stretching across the heavens. From within it, something enormous began to reach through. Ravenna clutched Aldric's arm. If it crosses, it remakes everything. Cassian held the scrolls tight to his chest. The sword can close it, but only with a sacrifice. Theron struggled to his feet, eyes burning with alien light. Let it through, Aldric. This world is broken. Let it be reborn. Aldric stared at the rift, the sword pulsing in his hand. Ravenna's tear-filled eyes, Cassian's terrified resolve, and Theron trembling in madness. He stepped forward. The sword vibrated violently, and Aldric understood. He finally understood. The sacrifice wasn't a life. It was a choice of which reality would exist. Two paths opened within him. One, close the rift, preserve the world as it is, flawed but human. Two, let the presence through, reset existence, purge all history, rewrite creation. Aldric exhaled. The world slowed. The sword whispered its final question. What world do you choose, Keeper? Aldric lifted the blade toward the sky. The light intensified. Time fractured. Ravenna shouted his name. Cassian stepped back in fear. Theron screamed in denial. The sword blazed like a newborn star. And Aldric made his choice. Jebudi. The ending, left purposefully ambiguous light, consumed everything. Jerusalem vanished. The world vanished. Even sound faded into white. Then, a distant whisper, a heartbeat, a single breath, and a voice. Soft, familiar, impossible to mistake. Aldric, fade to black. Silence. The listener is left uncertain. Did Aldric save the world, reset it, merge with the presence, or create a new reality entirely? The only truth is this: he chose. And the Convergence answered.